Is it again? Hello. Hello.
Yeah.
You're good now. Maybe Shane, did you miss that message from Tim? I got
I
it.
think
Oh.
he left or something. He's not on the call.
There's Shane.
Shane, he's here. Shane,
Oh.
can you hear us? Now he has the audio problem. But the virus is moving over Zoom.
Now?
Yes.
All right. Let's try this one more time. Did you hear anything that I said?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Just
Hello.
now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Thursday, October 10th edition of the SIG Network community meeting. This meeting is governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, boiling down effectively to please be nice to one another. So please do be nice to one another. It is open agenda usually. On this occasion, we're trying to do kept freeze, so we're going to try to go for a lighter agenda. If you have something that you'd like to talk about, if you don't mind putting it in the parking lot for our next meeting, we would appreciate that. But it is an open agenda, so please do add things in that parking lot. While we're doing this meeting, please use the raise hand feature as much as you can for questions or interjections, as that helps us to organize the meeting and keep things flowing. With that, I'm going to start sharing the screen, and we'll try to, because again, we are trying to make this one a little bit shorter because we have people that really need to focus on kept freeze. We'll just kind of get right into our agenda here.
So I ran through net new issues this morning. There was only a couple, and they all seem to have people working on them already, so we can just skip triage today.
Okay, I heard a little bit of what you said, although it was very robot. We're going to skip triage today because we did go through things kind of asynchronously, and we can do a more synchronous triage next time. Do we want to talk about this one specifically that's in here, Lars? Like,
yeah, it's a small thing. It has been accepted and it has a PR, but it allows a service to be unloadable unless it has sidecar containers loaded. And at least from what I have understand about sidecar containers, they are not part of the application. The application should run even if the sidecar containers are not loaded. They are like an extra thing, like a service mesh or something. And this PR actually make it impossible to use the applications unless it has the sidecar containers loaded because it owns the names of the port.
So you're suggesting it's a backwards incompatible change?
No, not really, because it allows a service to be dependent on sidecars. It cannot be loaded without the sidecars. There are mention about workarounds. If you use numerical port numbers, it works. And then it works even without the sidecar. But with this PR, you can actually create a service that requires sidecars. And I believe that is not intended. But if everybody has no problem with that, I'm fine with it. I just thought I would bring it up.
Can you guys
go ahead, Tim?
Can you hear me?
Yep, a little bit. Go.
All right. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my audio this morning. But I'm reading this issue. I'm interpreting it differently than you, Lars. I lost my window now. I see it. I see the problem report is about the service endpoint resolution not looking at init containers. But I didn't look at the pull request yet.
It's hard to hear you again.
I'll just use chat.
I think I heard a bit of what you were saying. But yeah, use chat and I'll reiterate it. He interprets it differently. We got that part. I think what you said after that is where we started to lose you. He says, I think it's that named ports are not found because EP resolution doesn't look at init containers? Question mark.
Yeah, but in my interpretation, they shouldn't. Either it's an init container that is transient and it will disappear, or it's sidecar containers, which is kind of a always alive init container. But that is not part of the application, and the service is part of the application. And by this PR, you allow to create a service that cannot be loaded without the sidecars, which is not part of the application. And I believe that is not intended.
And Tim put in the chat room, it's not necessarily part of the application. People compose pods from many containers.
So he said it's not necessarily not part of the application.
Oh, sorry. No, you're right. Not necessarily not part of the application. People
Yeah,
compose
but
pods
if
from many
it's a part
containers.
of the application, it should not be a sidecar. It should be a normal container. But if it's a sidecar, as I interpret sidecar concept, it is something that is loaded beside the application. It's not part of the application. It's something else, like a service mesh, for instance. And now we can create an application that requires a sidecar.
Tim's point is sidecars are a life cycle management thing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not as real.
If everybody is okay with it, just drop it. It was just a remark.
It may be perfectly reasonable to post it as a comment though on the PR and just to get more feedback.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, I think you will likely get a good conversation if you post that in there. But I do see where Tim's coming from as well. I'd have to think about it.
Yep, that's all.
Cool, thank you, Lars. All right, so then going back to the agenda, I just had a couple of short things, especially since we're trying to save some time today. The CFP for KubeCon London is open, and it actually closes a little less than, I wrote 2 weeks, but it closes a little less than 2 weeks after Salt Lake. So I just wanted to make sure we raised this. Please raise this with all your teams, you know, as much as you can to get people so that they don't lose out or lose track of it. You know, go to Salt Lake and say, oh goodness, I have a CFP coming in like a week and a half. So it is open. Please do start thinking about putting in your CFPs. The link is there. And then the second thing is just kind of just to let people know we're talking about, and we have a PR open for kind of expanding the role of sub-project leads and actually making sub-project leads more official in Kubernetes SIG's network. So if you're interested in kind of the TLDR on that is we want to make better communication between the sub-projects and the greater SIG happen. Please do go check out that PR if you're interested in some of the details in that, but it's kind of just like guidelines and documentation for like how to make that communication happen. And then ultimately, it was said, I was going to parking lot it, but it was said that we should talk about this because it's kind of right in the middle of things right now. Resource claim status with possible standardized network interface data. Is anybody capable of doing a very brief summary which focuses particularly on the implications to people who do Kubernetes networking projects of this PR?
I can if Tim can't speak. So, assuming people know DRA, sort of device plugins 2.0-ish sort of thing, dynamically adding resources to your pods. So people have been talking about doing this with networking stuff for a while now. And this PR, actually, I mean, I guess, Lionel, you're here, right? Did you want to talk about it since it's your PR, right?
Yes. So, as I said, the idea is to request or claim some network devices. So, I don't know, some kind of MAC-VLAN interface, for example, that your pod will receive. And the idea is to report what has been configured in your pods. So, what is the network interface name? What's the IP addresses, MAC addresses, or whatever. So the idea to report this is to use some kind of controller similar to what Kubernetes is doing, for example, with the endpoint slice controller, where you can, from the endpoint slice controller, get the IPs, put them in an endpoint slice, and then your service can use them to, I don't know, load balance or whatever the traffic. And this is the main reason, at least to me, why to have the resource claim status for networking. And it could be also for troubleshooting, for example, to see if everything is configured correctly.
Cool. Thank you for the summary. Does anybody have any questions? I don't see any hands up or anything about this PR. I see something in the chat. Hang on. No, that's from before. Okay. Am I wrong that this, wait, somebody is posting something. Okay. Am I wrong that this is maybe one of the bigger, we are on the precipice of like the future of a lot of networking extensions are DRA, and this is at the center of that?
Maybe overall, I feel similarly. I do think that to me, this has seemed like a pretty significant gap from my perspective, from a multi-networking perspective, that there's a way to represent the results of what you attached for a network. And if we're doing that through DRA, I think that this is critical for that. I think that there's a lot of interoperability between components that wants to know that status. I think that workloads sometimes want to know about that status as well. So I do think this is important, and I mean, I'm excited to see a lot of activity on this, and I'm really excited about how well Lionel has done to put this together and get some momentum behind it. But yeah, I think that it's a pretty important one in that space.
I actually don't know who put the agenda item on. It may have been me. I don't think it was, but it may have been me. So, oh, Tim has some things to say, but if this might be a good time, because it sounds like this is kind of like one of the bigger early pushes to like, we're going into a future of DRA for networking. So this would be a great time to ask questions. I think, since, if I'm not mistaken, the idea is to do this very immediately. So, DRA is a last mile mechanism. This is part of making the user experience reach MVP. I have concerns about the mechanics of lots of per node drivers writing to shared API resources.
Claim, but the claim is per it's global, but it's per pod, right? Because its claim is assigned to the pod, so indirectly only one will write to it. So I think in this case, and by the way, I think that's the same issue for all the other drivers. I think this is just status, but Isn't that, or all the drivers today just read? Is that what it is? They never give stuff back. In the DRA, is there any feedback coming from any of the drivers today?
I think some of them requested the downward API access, but the status, I am not sure. I haven't heard anything about that.
No, but that's read then, right? That's usually just for the read. But I wonder whether they write anything today. Because you added status, right? Is there already any driver writing status to that? Yeah,
I'm
and
here,
even
right?
then, right?
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Can you guys hear me at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So far, so good.
I approved moving ahead with this KEP. I don't think the mechanical problems are unique to this KEP. I think they exist already in DRA. Dan had some good questions. So Dan, I'm sort of looking at you if you're okay with this KEP.
I got it. Dan, I think it's on you now. From what I understood, team. That's on you.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, I'm okay directionally. You know, maybe not with 100% of the details, but I'm okay moving forward.
What does moving forward mean for anyone else who wants to implement something like a multi-network solution or anything like in the Kubernetes networking space from here on out? Obviously, I think like gateway, like ingress stuff is probably not going to be too concerned, but I mean, can somebody help just illuminate the implications?
I can give you some picture. So our next steps, if we're going to get this, we're going to have some feedback from all the networking stuff now. Not only right now that we had only pod IP on the status of the pod, right? And that was only for services. And that was it. With this, we are getting two things. You have a explicit network field with a network interface identifier plus its IP. And then you have data field, which I'm happy we're getting it, which is an opaque data that you can put your fully fledged output of whatever you need for that claim. And of course, this boils down to how you wish to organize the usage of DRA, because there are templates, there are things, and you can slice and dice them a bit, and there is like lists all around the place, so you can have multiple interfaces or devices in a single claim. So all that kind of you have that flexibility and complexity as well on top of that. So I think with multi-networking effort, we want to make sure that we organize that in such a way, okay, this is how you would use it. We have some controllers to prevent you from doing some incorrect things. This is our point of view. If you want to do something else, you always can build stuff from scratch on your own. But we would provide abilities to deploy your Kubernetes, deploy multi-network, deploy your driver, which is integrated with that multi-network component. And there you go, you have full networking and multi-networking across your cluster, right? For your pods with, in the future, with services, network policies, probably all the blows and whistles you would want to have for multi-networking, right? That's how I'm seeing it. Of course, you're saying gateway is not affected. Eventually,
No. I would not say gateway is not affected. I think it's a little bit further away, but I do not think.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually, when we're gonna get this and have the proper kind of standardization around this, the next stage will be to come to gateway and talk about cluster IP over there, right? And how we move. Can we completely? Our goal is completely move away from service object. That's a thing that's of the past. It's something that we cannot change. So we have to rely fully and only on gateway API and CRDs. so that we don't rely on any aspect on service. And that I mean like the full thing, like service side goes away, service object goes away, endpoint slices probably will stay there, because I think that's the only API that's common across the board, and it's the most flexible that we probably would reuse. But the rest has to be kind of disconnected from. So this is where the gateway API steps in, right? We need to figure out how to do the cluster IP and connecting that with the load balancer type. So all that kind of needs to be discussed, unless maybe that's already been discussed in gateway API. But that part, right? And then after this, we will be looking at network policy probably, right? But that's kind of the future, right? That's how this can kind of improve. The CUJ, it's a trade-off, right? We didn't want to do anything in the core, so the CUJ maybe it's not the easiest because you have to create few objects, but then you have the things that you would need, right, to kind of move on.
Roger that. Thanks for your
And-
thoughts. Sounds like because I remember you talking about in multi-network, like showing. I put a note about it above because there is a POC, but I also remember the diagrams and the brainstorming about using DRA.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
multi-network. Other thoughts, questions, concerns?
Just something to mention also, I think Dan had comment about that on how the status API should look like. He said that he liked the idea of having a parameter ref in the status where you store the status in another object. But I would like to mention that the original KEP, the multi-network KEP, we had the pod status that was reporting the network status. And this is also, I put it in the alternatives of this KEP, but if you have any opinion on this, if, I don't know, pod status would be a better place where to store this data instead of the resource claim. I don't know if it makes sense at the end, but yeah, I would like to get some opinion, or yeah, it would be great.
I'll call out for some focus in the PR if you're interested in, if I understood it correctly. The status currently wants to have a parameters ref. If I didn't misunderstand things, where it's kind of pointing somewhere else to get you information versus putting it right in the status. Did I capture that right?
Yeah, it was a comment from Dan that was saying that, okay, having this parameter ref for the status would be maybe a good idea, but the original KEP, I think it's also what maybe we would prefer as part of multi-network, because if you create this endpoint slice, you will select, for example, you will select some specific pods, and if you have it directly in the status of the pod, you don't have to look at another object, the resource claim, to check its status. You will already have the information there in the pod status, not in the resource claim status.
So I think it boils down to the alternative of creating or maybe, because there are two ways. I think Lionel pointed out to me that there is already a resource in a status that kind of reports back some of the stuff for each of the claims, right? And that KEP explicitly called out that it shall not have any of the metadata of the drivers. Should that be maybe revised, and instead of what we're doing here, use that one and expand on that one? I think that's the question here to this group as well, of, because if we push to this KEP, then the other approach is dead, and there's no point of having two same, right? For us, of course, it's more, as Lionel mentioned, more convenient is to have everything in one place rather than go look at the claims and pull all the claims, right? So that's either you have to keep watching all the claims now additionally, and then pull them from cache, or what's that, right? So that is that. So I think Yeah, that's so. Any opinions on if we were to instead do this in the pod status?
I feel like that's non-DRA like,
Yeah.
but you know, maybe more convenient. And just to clarify, when I said before that I liked the parameters ref approach, I meant that just in a, oh, this sounds cool. You know, maybe this is worth exploring. Not, I think this is the right solution. You should throw away what you have.
Okay, okay, sorry.
Okay. Don't see any other hands. Checking the chat room.
Yeah.
Tim says his concern with pod status is the ever-growing number of controllers which can write to it with no real auth Z mechanism.
I think then we compared word. Sorry, hard word, but basically we atomize the permissions, right? You have a separate object where you write the status, and that at least that's a bit easier. It's still not the best, but it's better than putting everything on a pod. In terms of the RBAC stuff, right? Out. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe with no other hands up and stuff like that, thank you guys for the thoughts on the status thing in particular. It sounds like that is something that needs to get shored up. I don't actually know in my head exactly how fast we have to shore up these comments, but I think it's very fast. So anybody who's interested in that discussion, please do join in the PR, which is linked above. 4817. Technically, that brings us to the end of the agenda. If I don't see any other hands or any other comments popping up. With that, I'll propose that we adjourn so we can get some time back. Going once. Motion seconded. Going twice. All right. Thank you everybody for coming. We'll see you in 2 weeks. If you had something you wanted to bring up today, of course, do put it on the parking lot for the next meeting. Cheers.